I'm a refugee, but I'm not hopeless. I have hope that the Son of Peace shall rise for me one day. If I can embrace diversity, why can't you? If I can say no war, why can't you? If I can shout for freedom, why can't you hear my scream? If I can fight for a better world, why can't you stand with me? Poetry for me is like, for me and for my community as well, is a form of resistance and resilience. I didn't look for poetry, poetry found me out, and it is through poetry I breathe, like I find a purpose of life. I believe that one day I will be free in the world or from the world.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to RawPods, Creative Thought and Expression, hosted by Ravani. Um, we're here in an event today that will be a mixture of poetry and conversation. For the conversation part, we are, as part of our series for RawPods, our podcast, we have a special stream running called Rivers of Resilience. Now, Rivers of Resilience focuses on the very, very important journeys of refugees and migrants and those touched by the refugee and migration experience, and people with lived experience or people who are working to help those who've experienced chaos and conflict in their lives. Now, there are 40 million and growing numbers of refugees in the world at this point in time. So it becomes really important that we hear their stories. But at the same time, we remember that these 40 million are not numbers. 40 million people are impacted, right, by conflict and displacement. And these are the reported numbers. These are the stories that reach us. These are the people who reach the shores, the lands of another country. And there are so many who drown at sea. There are so many who can't make it. And it's really important for, us to be sharing these stories. And I'm very, very pleased that we have with us today Siraj. Siraj, I'm going to hand over to you to introduce yourself. Tell people a little bit about yourself and your community, and then from there on, we'll go, further into the conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hi everyone, it's my honor to be here with all of you. My name is Sirajul Islam. I consider myself a proud Rohingya. I was born in Butidon township of Arkan state in Myanmar, Burma. Where my parents, my grandparents, my great grandparents were also born. But we were denied our right to citizenship and human rights. In August 2017, I was only 15 years old. I was a teenager. By the time I witnessed my home being burnt into ashes. And ultimately, I was forced to flee my country and seek a shelter in neighboring Bangladesh. And currently, I am based in one of the refugee camp in Cox's Bazar, which is home to 1 million plus Rohingya refugees.
Thank you, Siraj. Just a little bit of more context. I think Cox's Bazar that you're mentioning, it's one of the biggest refugee camps in the world. And, from what I was reading about it, but of course, Siraj, you can shed more light onto that. It's also prone to extreme weather conditions, right? Especially like during the monsoon season, but more so with climate change and floods and so on. So it would be good if you could, enlighten people a little bit to that as we go forward, and also, a little bit more about your personal journey, how you made it to, to Bangladesh from there. Any struggles that you face with adjusting, whatever you're comfortable sharing on this forum, just to make people understand what the refugee experience is.
Yeah, thank you. To talk about living conditions in Cox's Bazar, it is so much to talk about. So, the Rohingya crisis in Cox's Bazar it is the world largest refugee camp, and also it is the world largest humanitarian crisis and political crisis. It is, we were forced to flee in 2017. The genocide was committed again. The world think that the genocide against us was committed in 2017, but it was a process. The genocide actually started in 1962. So, gradually, like several episodes of human rights violation were continuously committed against us, but the world become more aware about our crisis in 2017, as we 1 million, like nearly 1 million Rohingya refugees were forced to flee to Bangladesh. So it is the crisis in Cox's the living condition in Cox's when the refugee camp is like very dire. You know, it is beyond words. Yeah, we are only dependent on $12 per month per person. So imagine how can one person survive with only $12 of food for like entire 1 month. So we are not allowed to earn our to make our own incomes. We are not allowed to livelihood. You know, we are not also we are unable to go outside the camp and work to earn money, and like everything is limited here. You know, we can't go outside the camp. We are confined by barbed wire fence here, and and like the children growing inside the camp are denied access to formal education. There are some educational initiatives run by non-profit organization, but you know it doesn't ensure the quality that a children need to become to become a person who can let his own life in the future, who can make his own decision in the future. So I was also a child when I was fleeing. I was leaving my country. I was only 15 years old. So when I was in my country, I was studying in grade 9. So my childhood dream was to become a doctor. So, but dreaming of becoming a doctor was a nightmare for me. I knew that I was not allowed to go to university. In Myanmar, the student amongst the Rohingya community are only allowed to study up to secondary education. After finishing secondary education, you are not allowed to go to university. You are not allowed to become a government official. Like you know, uh, after completing secondary education, you become useless. There's nothing you can do. Your education become useless, except regretting that the education you have already learned. So I became a refugee when I was studying in grade 9, and I couldn't. I thought that I could at least finish my secondary education. Although I dreamed to become a doctor, I knew it was a nightmare, but I was very hopeful that I could finish my secondary education. But I couldn't even finish my secondary education as I was forced to flee before completing my secondary education.
Thank you for sharing that story, Siraj. I think it takes so much courage to live through what you have, but also to talk about it. And just to make everyone aware, and Siraj, you can speak better to it, but just to introduce Siraj's complete profile to everyone. Siraj is an internationally published poet. He's also running from the refugee camp a community literary project where he's preserving and sharing the voice of his community and their stories. And he's doing a wonderful job with that. And I think it's remarkable what you're saying, that with all the limitations of not being able to leave the camp, not being able to utilize your education, you're still channeling what what you have into this project. So tell us more about it, how it started, what kind of stories you're helping to share, and just introduce the work to everyone, please.
I started writing and advocating for my community since I have become a refugee in 2017, and I was working like individually. I was working, of course, with people, but I was one person working with other people. So, influenced by the dire conditions of my community, I thought that it would be more effective if I take a collective initiative. So, the organization I established, the Rohingya Advancement Committee, I established it in 2023. So I established it like to uplift and rebuild and empower young individuals among the community through art, through artistic expression like poetry, art, storytelling, photography, and so on.
Yeah. So when you started it, how was it? Like, how did you manage to get people together, and how did you You have, and I think it's very remarkable, managed to make your voice reach internationally, right? Because I know that you work with a lot of international setups. Your books have been published internationally. Your community work is known. For those, who aren't aware, we had an event. Ravani and Kisatna held an event back in July where, Siraj's work and the work of other poets was shared, and it was absolutely beautiful just being able to hear that, and just being able to connect in that way. So, just tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it is true that I am stuck, I am confined inside the camp, but I have the access to connect with people around the world because I have access to network. The network is not available inside the camp everywhere, yeah, but there are some places where network is available. So I go there and use network and connect with people around the world. So people around the world are currently very much aware about the Rohingya crisis. So uh, like having access to online give me the opportunity to connect with people around the world and showcase my work globally.
And how is your work received in your community? Like, how do people respond to it?
Yeah, like my poetry for my community is a lifeline, like in their struggle for human rights and freedom. Poetry for me is like for me and for my community as well is a form of resistance and resilience. I
Mm,
believe my poetry is a lifeline and plays a vital role in our struggle for human rights and freedom.
mm. Poetry is such a great tool, and it has been throughout, probably humanity's history for resistance and even resilience, right? Because it allows you
Yeah.
to convey your ideas in a beautiful way that reaches people's hearts. And I think it's
Yeah.
absolutely brilliant that you're doing that. Is there a tradition of of poetry that you're drawing on at this time, or is it more of, what is your writing process like when you're telling your stories? Because naturally, you have so much to share with the world.
Yeah, in compared to the world, we are so much back in poetry world. Poetry was like only a form of verbal expression in my community.
Mm,
If you are looking for a poet back in 10 years, you will not be able to find a poet in the Rohingya community. So we are like the first generation of poet in the Rohingya community. So we have like some poetic expression, like we that derived like that. It was like verbal expression, only verbal expression, like some folk tales, some proverbs, and like some songs. So like if you are looking for some poems written back in 10 years, you will not be able to find any poems.
mm. So I think it's all the more remarkable that you're doing the work that you are, right? You're sharing your
Yeah.
voice with the world. And I think it's in many traditions, poetry has been narrative. It has been an oral tradition in many parts of the world for a long time. So I think that is part of the evolution of poetry. Um, does it tell us a little bit like how does it like when you share your poems with the world, is it both an act of personal resilience and rebellion in a way, rebelling against the confines, and also do you feel like it's helping build resilience in your community, and is there enough awareness in the world? Is it building that kind of empathy that you want, and where do you see this going? Where's the ideal place you want this journey of yours to take?
I believe it is building, but not as much as expected. People, their organization, like humanitarian organization working here are not empowering, not taking any initiative on like creative inspiration like this. You would be surprised that I have never got any support for my writing here in the camp. Here are thousands of hundreds of organizations working here inside the camp. They are spending millions of money, but they are not investing any money in poetry. So I feel that they are not valuing our creativity. The work I do is the most important for my community. Like if there are any conference on the Rohingya crisis, if there are any event on the Rohingya crisis, we do not have any space on the table. So this is so surprising for me. I believe my work is raising awareness across the world, but not as much as I expect, and not as much as it need to be.
Yes, I understand. And do you, obviously, it's very hard to understand the reasons for that, but I do appreciate that. I think around the world, this is a very big problem, right? When you're thinking of helping somebody, you think in very material terms, whereas I think it's these soft ways of helping, these soft ways of personal expression that are also really important to, the existence and survival of the soul, right? But it's great that you're persevering, and I think,
Yeah,
that's a way forward because that's how your voice will reach more people and build that momentum. Siraj, it would be lovely if we hear some of your poems. I know you've written some wonderful ones, so would you like to share some with us today?
yeah, of course, yeah. First, I'd like to recite a poem in my mother tongue. It's in Rohingya language. Although you cannot understand it, you can feel the tone of my mother tongue. So, Asha, I একজন রিফিউজি, আই হারাই গড় আর মেডি ইনসানি হকতুন মারুময়ী, কিন্তু আই আজও আশা ন হারাই। আই একজন রিফিউজি, শান্তি হই হই ফানা হই জারিগৈ, কিন্তু নফায়ের শান্তি হনমিক্যা হনে ফুনিবু আর দুঃখর হতা। আই একজন রিফিউজি, শান্তি হই হই হাইনতে হাইনতে সুগতুন লোয়াইবরত ইয়ে, কিন্তু আই আজও আশা ন হারাই। আই একজন রিফিউজি, বুক ভরাইয়া দুঃখ লই, চুক ফুরাইয়া পানি লই, আই আজও আশা লই জিন্দা আছি। So that's the poem. Now I'd like to recite it in Rohingya in English translation. Hope. I'm a refugee. I lost my home and my land. I'm deprived of human rights, but I still don't lose hope. I'm a refugee, dying from seeking peace, but I find it nowhere who will ever listen to my plight. I'm a refugee, restlessly crying for peace. My eyes are about to bleed, but I still don't lose hope. I'm a refugee with a heart full of pain, with eyes well with tears. I'm still alive with hope. I'm a refugee, but I'm not hopeless. I have hope. I have hope that the Son of Peace shall rise for me one day. So I will now recite some of my English poem as well. But mind you, children are chasing brown loops as though chasing a dream. Their minds race with only concern about their next meal. Running barefoot is their favorite adventure. Thorns stitch their souls, but it seems as if the moon breeze harms the dewy lawn. How to run faster is what they only essay to learn, for books are strangers to them now. I know this can't matter less to you, but mind you, this is nothing less than what the end of the world could be. Another poem, International Law. I have read very many dramas, each left me amused, except the one, so called international law, so witty and phony, miserable thought, the very drama that left me in tears. I will now recite a poem from my second collection of poetry, which is internationally published. Still I Smile, a Voice for the Voiceless. If I can, why can't you? If I can love you, why can't you love me? If I can feel your pain, why can't you feel mine? If I can embrace diversity, why can't you? If I can say no war, why can't you? If I can shout for freedom, why can't you hear my scream? If I can fight for a better world, why can't you stand with me? If I can care about you, why can't you care about me? If I can treat you the way you deserve, why can't you treat me the same? If I can value your language, why can't you value mine? If I can respect your culture, why can't you respect mine? If I can accept you for who you are, why can't you accept me for who I am? If I can call you who you are, why can't you call me Rohingya? No, I will recite my last poem from my first collection of poetry, If I Were a Bird, a Voice of Resilience. If I were a bird, if I were a bird, I could fly everywhere and reach wherever I want. If I were a bird, I could sing freely the melody of my earth. If I were a bird, I could cross any border without passport and visa. If I were a bird, I could never face hatred and would be safe from war. If I were a bird, I could enjoy my life just the way I deserve. If I were a bird, I could never realize how unfair the world is. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
That was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Siraj. It was very, very moving, incredible. And I think what you're doing is amazing. It's really important, but I can also see the courage it takes, to do the work that you're doing and to share your voice. And your poetry is very moving and it really asks the important questions. So well done and keep doing the wonderful work you are. I feel like people may want to talk to Siraj and, share their comments and feedback. So I'm going to leave the floor open to anyone who wants to unmute themselves and, say a few words of appreciation and in solidarity with him. Please go ahead.
That was I'm kind of like you left me kind of like speechless, but it was truly amazing. Please keep writing. That was a powerful reading. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it was absolutely brilliant and really from the heart. And it speaks for so many people around the world, all of us who aren't in your situation, but who, support you. That was just truly, truly inspiring. And the hope is just the word we have to live on to. And you have a bright future. You're a wonderful young man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Actually, I didn't look for poetry. Poetry found me out, and it is through poetry I breathe. Like I find a purpose of life. I
Yes,
don't care if I enjoy freedom in the world one day or not. I believe that one day I will be free in the world or from the world.
exactly. You will. Beautiful.
Beautiful. And that belief that one day you will be free. As we say, inshallah, keep going.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
this is the path to freedom that you're paving. So wonderful. Thank you. I really appreciate what you've shared, Siraj. I had been reading yesterday, and I think this is beautiful. And a lot of people around the world feel for refugees. And I was reading this poem by Khalil Gibran yesterday, and he wrote this in 1915. Now, for most of you would be familiar with his work and who he is, but he was basically a Lebanese who'd gone to the US and who was over there during the First World War when there was a there was a lot of starvation, mass starvation in Lebanon, because of the war, because the forces on both sides had blocked access to food. And I was reading and I was thinking how valid those feelings still are, how those patterns have continued in the world more than 100 years down, and how they're still relevant. And those feelings that are still relevant of seeing people suffer, especially seeing your own people suffer. And I feel like to a poet, all of humanity is one, right? Anybody suffering is our own people suffering. And how you feel so helpless. So I thought that this poem would be relevant to share today. It's called Dead Are My People. And it's a very long poem, so I'm just going to read a few extracts from it. Gone are my people, but I exist yet, lamenting them in my solitude. Dead are my friends, and in their death, my life is naught but great disaster. My people died from hunger, and he who did not perish from starvation was butchered with the sword. And I am here in this distant land, roaming amongst the joyful people who sleep upon soft beds and smile at the days while the days smile upon them. If I were hungry and living amid my famished people and persecuted among my oppressed countrymen, the burden of the black days would be lighter. Upon my restless dreams, and the obscurity of the night would be less dark before my hollow eyes and my crying heart and my wounded soul. For he who shares with his people their sorrow and agony will feel the supreme comfort created only by suffering in silence. And he will be at peace with himself when he dies innocent with his fellow innocents. What can an exiled son do for his starving people, and of what value unto them is the lamentation of an absent poet? Were I an ear of corn grown in the earth of my country, the hungry child would pluck me and remove with my kernels the hand of death from his soul. Were I a ripe fruit in the gardens of my country, the starving women would gather me and sustain life. Were I a bird flying the sky of my country, my hungry brother would hunt me and remove from the flesh of my body the shadow of the grave from his body. But alas, I am not an ear of corn grown in the plains of Syria, nor a ripe fruit in the valleys of Lebanon. This is my disaster, and this is my mute calamity, which brings humiliation before my soul and before the phantoms of the night. If my nation had partaken in the war of all nations and had died in the field of battle, I would say that the raging tempest had broken with its might the green branches, and strong death under the canopy of the tempest is nobler than slow perishment in the arms of senility. But there was no rescue from the closing jaws. My people dropped and wept with the crying angels. If an earthquake had torn my country asunder and the earth had engulfed my people into its bosom, I would have said a great and mysterious law has been moved by the will of divine force, and it would be pure madness if we frail mortals endeavored to probe its deep secrets. But my people did not die as rebels. They were not killed in the field of battle, nor did the earthquake shatter my country and subdue them. Death was their only rescuer, and starvation their only spoils. My people died on the cross. They died while their hands stretched toward the east and west, while the remnants of their eyes stared at the blackness of the firmament. They died silently, for humanity had closed its ears to their cry. They died because they did not befriend their enemy. They died because they loved their neighbors. They died because they placed trust in all humanity. They died because they did not oppress the oppressors. They died because they were the crushed flowers and not the crushing feet. They died because they were peacemakers. They perished from hunger in a land rich with milk and honey. They died because monsters of hell arose and destroyed all that their fields grew and devoured the last provisions in their bins. My people and your people, my Syrian brother, are dead. What can be done for those who are dying? Our lamentations will not satisfy their hunger, and our tears will not quench their thirst. What can we do to save them between the iron paws of hunger? My brother, the kindness which compels you to give a part of your life to any human who is in the shadow of losing his life is the only virtue which makes you worthy of the light of day and the peace of the night. Remember, my brother, that the coin which you drop into the withered hand stretching toward you is the only golden chain that binds your rich heart to the loving heart of God. So that's, bits of the poem that I thought would be relevant to share over here. Thank you again, Siraj, for coming here and sharing your story.